So welcome to Krav Life. I'm Paul Simos, and today I have a special guest with me, Mr. Jeff Sidner. How are you doing? How are you doing today, sir?
Good, thank you. Yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. So tell us, where are you coming to us from?
Sure. I'm based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm part of the National Karate Schools of Minnesota.
Oh, okay. Perfect. And so for the people that don't know you, let's discuss a little bit about your background and get that kind of backdrop. Is Krav Maga did you start in Krav Maga, or did you come from a different, like a martial art background or law enforcement or something like that?
I come from a martial arts background. I started training in 1989, kind of bouncing around from school to school, and then national program in 1992. Trained 3 years, got out in 95, and I teach each year.
Okay, perfect. And how did you get involved in Krav Maga?
Well, our Chicago schools, we have schools in Minneapolis, Chicago, and Colorado. And our Chicago owner decided to do a little bit of research on ways to really get adults involved back in training, because in the 80s and 90s, it was all adults. The demographic was pretty much 18 to 25-year-old males, right? We're predominantly doing training. And then in the late 90s, early 2000s, it really transitioned to, really mid 90s or so, kids just boomed in martial arts training. And I think the perception became by the early 2000s that if you wanted to learn, if you wanted to do karate, it was kind of for kids. If you were an adult that wanted to get in shape, then you went the CrossFit route. That was really big. If you were an adult that wanted to learn how to, really fight, then you went into the MMA route because that was getting really big. And karate was just kind of left, as far as the adult demographic, it was kind of a void left in martial arts training. So our Chicago owner, his name is Master Chris Nelson, was doing some research on what adults are looking for when they look for self-defense specifically. And Krav Maga came up as the #1 search. And so he started doing some research on different organizations, and we landed on an organization based out in Fayetteville, Arkansas, led by Professor Marty Kale, who has pretty direct ties to the IDF and Israel and trained through them. And we hired him to come out and do a seminar with us. And so that was back in 2015 that he came out and we all did our first seminar and really fell in love with it, saw a great appeal to the efficiency of it, and decided to incorporate it into our system. So we had a separate program to offer for people who wanted to train but weren't really interested in putting on a karate uniform and going through a traditional belt system.
Yeah. And so how did your training in Krav Maga progress from that first seminar in 2015?
Honestly, it was really seamless. A kick is a kick, a punch is a punch, knees and elbows. What's different about Krav is the way it's packaged and the way it's presented, but the techniques are all very similar. And so it was a really easy transition for all of us that have been, had decades of martial arts training to transition into this new mindset of thinking and putting things together. But the muscle memory was all there. The technique was all there. So it was really pretty seamless.
Nice. And so what was your favorite thing about Krav Maga? Like what drew you to it?
I really like the efficiency of it. Traditional martial arts training, especially when it comes to self-defense, relies so much on things going a certain way, and we can kind of look back and laugh at it now. Like if someone's not going to come up to you on the street, bow to you, get into a traditional stance and throw a traditional punch. That's just not how it's going to go. But a lot of traditional schools train that way because we were alluding to this earlier. It's been done that way for hundreds of years. So this is the way we do it. And there's a place for that. There's a place for that tradition, and there's a place for that art form. But Krav Maga is the martial art without the art, right? It gets rid of all of that, and it just sticks to, hey, this is what is realistically going to happen, and this is what is realistically going to be the most effective, and it's ever evolving, which is my favorite part about it. The fact that they'll train a technique, and then if through research or through practical application, they find that it's not effective or it doesn't work the way that it was originally thought, they'll throw it out. They're not afraid to do that. And a lot of traditional systems are afraid of change because they think it somehow degrades their art or illegitimizes it. Krav has no ego in that regard. Krav goes, all right, if that doesn't work, we're going to redo it. We're going to figure out a better way to do it, and we're going to change it immediately. And so the ever-evolving nature of it is what I really like about it.
Nice. And how has your student body adapted to the Krav Maga?
Well, our program is still very much growing. We don't have nearly as many new adults in the system as we would like. Our bread and butter is still martial arts. So we have not transitioned to a Krav Maga school. We are a martial arts school that has a Krav Maga program. But the people that have started with it back when we first introduced it are all still with it, and they absolutely love it. New people coming in, a lot of times it can seem a little intense to somebody with no training. So there's that. We have to be careful with how we present it with people who have had training who want to transition to Krav versus somebody who's really just walking off the street with no training wanting to give Krav a try. And sometimes it can be challenging to appeal to both of those demographics in one classroom setting. But we're getting better at it, and we're adapting to it. And in general, people really love it.
And does any of the Krav Maga philosophy influence the training and information that you're presenting in your karate program?
Absolutely. Frankly, the self-defense, a lot of the self-defense techniques are frankly more effective. And again, it's not that they're different, it's how they're presented. And the efficiency of it. No defense without an offense, right? And so we have tailored some of our older techniques, more traditional techniques, especially when it comes to the weapons defenses, to a Krav methodology, just because it's better. Now, there are some pieces of the Krav methodology that we don't find necessarily as effective, and so we're not afraid to go, well, we kind of like the way we do it. We're going to stick with that, but we're going to incorporate some of this other stuff into it and kind of mix and match. So,
yes. Can you give us an example of something that you liked that you did better before?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of some of the Krav techniques, when it comes to defending against kicks, for example, somebody throws a forward kick, and a lot of Krav techniques involve bringing the front hand down to kind of brush and block that kick. And that's, in my opinion, just a big mistake. You don't want to bring your hand down, below your waist. You leave your head exposed. If you look at more Muay Thai style or kickboxing style, somebody throws a low technique, you're going to use your legs to check the technique. You're not going to bring your hand down and expose your head. And so that's one area that we don't adopt the Krav philosophy. We'll actually teach kind of full contact kickboxing along with the Krav technique and kind of get the best of both worlds from that respect.
Yes. And that's what Krav is, right? Finding better ways to do things.
Exactly.
So another kind of tenet of Krav Maga is that it's adaptable to each of the individual students. Have you kind of gotten to that point? You sort of talked about it before, that you're getting better at it, but do you adapt the self-defenses to someone that might have a limitation, so to speak?
And that way, Krav is a lot more adaptable than traditional martial arts training is, especially for adults that are dealing with any level of injury or just inactivity, right? In traditional martial arts, you got to be able to kick a certain height or stretch a certain distance, and all of that goes out the window with Krav, which is nice. I mean, if you can walk and chew bubblegum, you can do it, and you don't have to be able to kick above your head in order to be effective in self-defense. And so Krav lends itself to a much wider variety of physical abilities or limitations, being able to still be effective, which is the sign of any good self-defense system. You don't have to be a super athlete to be effective with it.
Do you because Krav Maga is a lot about de-escalation and avoidance, situational awareness. Do you guys incorporate those teachings into your classes as well?
We do. It's more of a philosophy. What we actually train, and this is what we talk to our students about, is that the actual contact techniques that we're teaching them are for that very small percentage of situations where things have gone horribly wrong. Right? If you're in a situation where you're actually having to strike somebody or knee somebody, or then there are several things that probably led up to that were mistakes, right? And so we have to teach our students about watching for what those warning signs are, whether it's de-escalation, whether it's choosing to cross the street rather than approach a group that looks, suspect, being aware of your surroundings, going down certain alleyways or staying on a well-lit area, all those types of things. I've been training in martial arts for over 30 years, and I tell my students I've never actually had to use my skills in a real life situation. I've done a lot of, full contact fighting and fighting with pads on and things like that. But if you're in an altercation, something's gone wrong. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, there are steps that have led up to that were avoidable.
Mm-hmm. And do you guys teach like scenario based, or is it just technique based?
Both. I like to personally teach concepts rather than specific techniques. Somebody grabs you, you do A, B, or C. I don't like to necessarily do that because I don't want to get people too used to having to do a sequential order of techniques. I put more of an emphasis on concept. If somebody attacks you in a certain way, the concept is find a target and hit it. Doesn't have to be this target in this order or this weapon in this order. These are the targets or the weapons that we use for the targets that we go for, and you find an open target and you hit it. It doesn't have to necessarily be this step-by-step sequential order. And when you teach people concepts, then it can adapt to a very wide range of scenarios versus teaching a specific sequence of techniques that only works in that sequence of scenarios that lead up to that.
Do you find that people learn better that way?
I do, because again, it can be applied to multiple situations. Whereas if you teach somebody a specific sequence, it's great if they get attacked from the right side on that shoulder with that hand, but if you teach them concepts, then it can be adapted to a wider variety of situations. And they find that they're more comfortable with it. It builds their confidence up.
Nice. So what is the main thing that you want someone like that's brand new off the street to kind of understand about Krav Maga when they enter a class? What is the one, if they had one lesson, what do you want them to walk away with?
Repetition creates reaction. It's one of our mottos. The techniques that we teach are simple. They have to be. And that's the nature of Krav Maga, is that it can be learned in a really short amount of time and it can be effective. But it's deceiving in that, you can learn techniques in a few lessons that will work. But without the years of repetition of doing those techniques under pressure, you're not gonna be able to perform them. And so I don't want to give people a false sense of security. I want them to understand that pretty much anybody can do this, but it's not a cure-all, and it's not, taking a few lessons doesn't mean, okay, hey, now I'm safe. Now I can protect myself. And only through repetition will you, under stress, go to what your body has memorized through techniques done over and over and over again, that muscle memory. And so every class will do stress drills where we'll drill a certain technique, we'll drill some concepts, whether it's wrist grabs or grabs from the front, grabs from behind. We'll do a workout, and then at the end we'll do some kind of stress drill. And the stress drill will be, getting their heart rate up and then forcing them to perform the techniques, or it may be closing their eyes and then getting grabbed and having to open and assess and perform the technique. But just that really highlights to them that, hey, I just learned this technique 15 minutes ago, but when I was under a little bit of stress, I hesitated. It wasn't there. And that shows them that, okay, I can do this, but it's going to take time for it to really be in there where it would actually be effective.
And what happens if if a person has done it for a good amount of time and they still can't get it, do you adapt the technique or change it for them? Try and discover why it's not working for them?
Yeah, I honestly don't run into that too much. You take any one of our students that's been with us for a significant amount of time, and the basic stuff is really in there. But I mean, anytime anybody's having a mental roadblock with a technique or a concept, we'll adapt. We'll adapt and we'll change it. And sometimes it's presented it slightly differently that makes it click for them. Or if they just their body just doesn't turn that way or work that way, we'll find out, okay, well, what does work for you? Okay, let's drill it this way. But that can all be worked out within a few lessons. You tend to spot it early on. So by the time somebody's been with us for, and I would say, at least a year is a significant amount of time. If someone's been with us for at least a year, those basic techniques are in there, and any limitations that they had, they've adapted to by that point.
Nice. So where do you where do you want to take your personal Krav training? What sort of direction do you want to go with your Krav?
I just really enjoy training and learning. I mean, as a martial artist, we're always students, right? And that's the fun part about being a part of this world. And so that thirst for learning more has never gone away, and it never will. And so as far as where I want to take my personal Krav training, I want to just keep learning and keep adapting and keep growing and keep adding tools to my toolbox because I enjoy it. I enjoy the training, and I enjoy understanding the methodology and just getting comfortable with it. So.
Nice. And how's the Krav scene, I guess, in Minneapolis? Is there a lot of Krav Maga studios, or is it something that's still just kind of taking root there?
There's a good amount of Krav Maga studios in the Minneapolis area, and especially coming out of the pandemic, things are obviously took a big step back, but they're starting to grow again. We're seeing a huge influx in our kids programs, but also adults are coming back too. And I think that need for people who want to get a workout, who want to train, but don't want to be an MMA fighter and don't want to put on a karate uniform. This is just it's a very specific niche that really fits that need really well.
Nice. And what is I'd say, well, because of the pandemic and everything that's gone on, even during the pandemic, pre-pandemic, we've seen an increase in violence and tension, shall we say, across the country and worldwide. Are you noticing the same thing in your area? Is there an increase in violence?
There definitely seems to be. Tensions are, especially between law enforcement and the community. I'm sure you and the rest of the world has known what has gone on in Minneapolis in the last year and a half here. And so that definitely has increased just tensions in the community in general. And I think that people are realizing that, hey, I've got to take some steps to be able to protect myself and to be able to handle those types of situations that may or may not come up.
And do you guys train your students for those type of situations, which would definitely be more kind of multiple opponents and that sort of scenario-based training?
All of our training is very applicable, and that's what I really like about Krav Maga versus the traditional martial arts training. So much of the martial arts training is done for different reasons, whether it's developing body control, increasing strength and flexibility, but it's not stuff that you're ever really going to run into, versus everything that we do in Krav is based on what's probably going to happen. And that way it's practical, it makes sense, it's people can understand immediately how this could be applied to the specific situations, or taking those concepts and apply them to multiple situations. But it's all realistic scenarios, which is what I really like about it. So much of our time as traditional martial artists was spent on techniques, again, that are never going to be realistically, thrown at us, or not, certainly not in that traditional one-step way. But Krav is all about, hey, this is probably what's going to happen. This is probably what it's going to look like. We'll do our best to replicate how it's going to feel, and we'll train and train and train to develop that reaction time.
And does that also translate into how you approach weapons defenses as well?
Especially weapons defenses. Whether you're a concealed carry person and you have a weapon, and that was something that was really new for me. I was never a gun owner before I started training in Krav Maga. But once I started training, I went out and bought a firearm, got my permit, and go to the range regularly. And it occurred to me, gosh, I've spent 20, 30 years teaching people how to disarm assailants without ever really knowing what it's like to hold a gun and fire it, and understand how to take it apart and different parts of it. And there's a lot of advantages to that. So with weapons training especially, it has been pretty revolutionary for me personally in how I approach that training from a defensive standpoint, and from using the weapon from that standpoint as well.
So is crimes with firearms more prevalent in your area, or is it more crimes with like a knife?
It's hard to say. I don't actually know the statistics on that. I know that many times when weapons are involved, it's not necessarily to use the weapon; it's to get something, to scare somebody. It's not often an actual attack with the weapon, but I don't know necessarily what's more prevalent. It'd be hard for me to say.
Okay. And so do you think that the current atmosphere is what's driving the increased interest in self-defense classes?
I think it's absolutely a significant factor, probably the most significant factor, just the volatility of the scene right now. Has a lot of people wanting to take steps and be proactive and be able to protect themselves.
Nice. And so what is the future for your studio? Like, where do you want to take it? Do you have plans to open up multiple studios? Like, what is the thing?
Well, I actually own multiple locations, and I'm happy with where I'm at. I really the purpose of for me, the purpose of my studios is to serve the community. I mean, we're a community staple. I obviously believe in what we're doing because I'm a product of it. I can't imagine my life without it. And I think any lifetime martial artist would say the same. Who would we be without this training? And we take a lot of pride in that, and we take that very seriously. And in a time where there's so much volatility, especially between law enforcement and the community, any positive influence that we can have on the community is really our mission. That's what we need to do. And so I want to see us continue to grow and thrive, obviously, not only because it's my livelihood, but because I know that we have an opportunity to touch a lot of lives and change a lot of lives in ways that other people can't.
Nice. And do you have just like the one Krav Maga course, or do you have like specialized courses like for women only, just weapons, seminars for community groups?
We have basically the one Krav Maga program, but we often do specialized seminars for specific situations that come up. When all we were hearing was about active shooter scenarios, we did active shooter seminars. We've done carjacking seminars. We'll do women-only self-defense seminars. It's all wrapped around our core Krav Maga program, but we'll constantly, be putting out different specific focuses, either due to what's prevalent, in the community, or just based on a need that may arise for whatever reason. We'll figure out a way to kind of specialize that training for that specific situation.
Perfect. And if someone wanted to get involved with you guys, or to take a class, what is the best way to contact you guys right now?
We have a website on www.nationalkarate.com. Like I mentioned, we're the largest organization in the Midwest. We're not hard to find. The website will follow you to the specific location that you're looking at or looking for. There's ways to put in your contact info and get contacted by an instructor in that area. So it's pretty easy. Just go to nationalkarate.com. Type in your zip code, figure out what school is going to be nearest you, and then we'll get you started.
Perfect. We'll also make sure that your studio is listed on the My Krav Life Krav Maga directory, and then that way people can link straight through to you. Yeah. So I want to thank you, sir, for coming on and for sharing some of your knowledge with us. It's always great to have different perspectives and helping build the Krav Maga community.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for what you're doing, and best of luck to you. This is great.
Awesome. All right. So thank you, sir, and you have yourself a great day.
All right. You as well. Take care.